Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast.
Great to be here.
Today we're taking a close look at a company that's really aiming high, you could say. Joby Aviation.
Literally high, yeah. Trying to get us off the ground in a whole new way.
Exactly. And their upcoming earnings report, it's definitely got people talking. We're going to break down what investors really need to watch for.
That's right. Because with Joby, it's less about the usual financial numbers right now. It's much more about them pioneering this whole new market. The journey to actually flying commercially is the real story.
So our goal today is to cut through some of that noise, look at the latest analysis, and figure out what truly matters when Joby reports. We'll cover the expectations, their history, the wider market stuff, and what might happen. And before we jump right in, if you're finding these conversations useful, please do think about subscribing, maybe liking the video, leaving a comment. It really helps us reach more investors like you.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there's a specific company you want us to look into next time, just drop it in the comments. We always appreciate the support.
We do. And hey, if you want to help keep the lights on, you could always buy us coffee. Links below. Okay, let's get started. Immediate facts first. When are we expecting Joby's Q2 2025 earnings release and the call?
Okay, so the report itself should be out after the market closes on Wednesday, August 6th, 2025.
Right, after the bell.
Exactly. And then the earnings call, the webcast, that's scheduled for 5:00 p.m. Eastern Time the same day.
Got it. Wednesday, August 6th. And what are the analysts thinking? Financial expectations? Revenue? Earnings per share?
Well, for revenue, the consensus is basically minimal. Like almost nothing, or maybe even zero. It's really important for listeners to get that Joby is, pre-commercialization.
Still building things.
Exactly. They're not selling flights yet, so big revenue numbers just aren't expected. It's not their current model.
Okay. And earnings?
On earnings per share, or EPS, the consensus estimate for Q2 is looking like a loss of 19 cents per share. So 19 cents per share.
Flight is 19 cents. Okay. Is there any kind of whisper number making the rounds? Or any specific guidance from Joby themselves for this quarter?
No specific whisper number has really popped up widely, not as of yesterday anyway. And importantly, the company, the management, they didn't give explicit financial guidance for Q2 last time they talked.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, their focus when they communicate, it's really squarely on operational stuff, milestones, how the certification's going, building up their manufacturing.
So that tells you where their head's at.
It really does. It shows what's driving the narrative for them right now. It's not sales targets, it's hitting those engineering and regulatory goals.
Makes sense. Okay, let's look back a bit then. How has Joby actually done against expectations in, say, the last few quarters? Any big earnings surprises, positive or negative?
It's actually been pretty consistent in a way. So Q1 2025, their normalized EPS was negative $0.20. That was a miss, but only by a penny.
Just barely.
Right. But then their GAAP EPS, the standard accounting number, that was negative $1.11, which actually beat expectations by 7 cents. So kind of a mixed bag, but small differences.
And historically.
Yeah, looking back over the last year, so 4 quarters, it's been similar. Narrow misses or beats, usually just a few cents either way. It just shows that consistent expected negative EPS while they're pre-revenue, expectations aren't high financially.
Okay, so the numbers themselves don't cause massive fireworks.
Right.
What about the stock's reaction right after earnings? Does a small beat or miss usually send the stock flying, or is more subdued?
That's what's interesting here. Historically, Joby's immediate post-earnings reaction has been, well, pretty quiet.
Really?
Yeah, the stock often trades kind of flat, maybe plus or minus 5% right after the results come out. We've only really seen bigger moves, maybe up to 10% when there's a big announcement about operations.
Like a certification update or something.
Exactly, or a new partnership maybe. There haven't been these huge lasting price gaps just because they beat or missed EPS by a couple of cents. The price moves much more on those business development headlines.
So what does this all mean for investors then? If it's not about revenue or profit in the usual sense, what are the real key things to watch with Joby?
That really brings up the core point, doesn't it? What counts as a win for a company like this? Their operating expenses, they're still high. They have to be. They're pouring money into R&D, into testing, and like we said, crucially, into getting certified.
Right.
Revenue is still tiny, almost nothing. So the absolute main things to watch are, 1, their cash burn rate. How fast are they spending their money?
Okay, cash burn.
And 2, tangible progress. Real steps forward towards getting that FAA Part 135 certification, which lets them operate commercially, and the type certification for the aircraft itself. Those are the lifelines.
Certification in cash. Got it. Now, thinking about this last quarter specifically, beyond the financials, has there been any major news, any company-specific catalysts that might shape how people feel going into this report?
Nothing huge like a major product launch, no. Management, press releases, it's all still emphasizing those key background activities, test flights, validating prototypes, talking with the FAA and other regulators.
Just steady work behind the scenes.
Pretty much. It's that incremental, very technical progress, all pointing towards that goal of commercial service in the next few years. It's a marathon, not a sprint at this phase.
Okay, and if we zoom out, connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
how's the whole advanced air mobility AAM or eVTOL sector doing generally? And are there broader economic trends affecting companies like Joby?
Well, this sector, AAM and eVTOL, it still gets a lot of attention, a lot of interest,
Yep.
but there's definitely some growing skepticism creeping in.
About what?
Mostly about the timelines. When will these things actually be flying commercially? And the sheer amount of money needed, the capital intensity, plus just the risk of making it all work, the execution risk.
And the economy.
Yeah, that plays in too. Rising interest rates, investors being maybe a bit more cautious, focusing on preserving capital. That tends to make people a bit more wary of speculative pre-revenue companies like Joby. So that macro environment definitely adds another layer of challenge, another level of scrutiny.
Understood. And what about the analysts covering Joby? Any recent big upgrades or downgrades we should know about?
No major shifts recorded in the last month or so. Analysts are pretty consistently focused on the same things we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Cash runway, certification progress, hitting those development milestones.
Not the quarterly numbers so much.
Not nearly as much. And their price targets, they're still all over the map. Really wide range, which just
Okay.
reflects that huge uncertainty around when they'll commercialize and how big they can ultimately get. Pretty typical for this kind of pioneering tech.
Okay, let's switch gears to the technicals, the stock chart itself. How has Joby's stock been acting as we get closer to this earnings report? Any kind of big run-up or notable pattern?
Actually, Joby's traded slightly lower heading into earnings, which isn't that unusual, really, for these high beta pre-revenue type stocks, especially when the broader market's been a bit volatile.
So no major bullish surge beforehand?
No, not a noticeable run-up. That would suggest a lot of people are betting big on good news right before the report.
And for people watching the charts, any key price levels to keep an eye on? Support, resistance.
Well, based on recent trading and looking at the options market activity, the implied key levels seem to be around, say, $15 on the downside for support.
Okay, $15.
And maybe around $18 on the upside for resistance. But, you always want to confirm those levels with how it actually trades on the day.
Definitely. Now, this is where it gets really interesting for some folks. The options market. What is it implying? What kind of price move is it pricing in after the earnings come out?
Right, the market's guess, essentially. Currently, based on the pricing of at-the-money straddles, basically betting on a move, direction unknown, the options market is implying a potential move of about plus or minus 10%.
Plus or minus 10%.
Yeah, for the trading session immediately following the earnings release. And that's pretty consistent with how Joby has tended to move around past earnings events. It's the market basically building in that potential for volatility.
Okay, plus or minus 10%. So let's game this out. What would a bullish scenario look like? What kind of news or results coming out of this report could actually push the stock higher, maybe towards that 10% upside or even more?
Right, the good news case. Well, a narrower loss than expected, beating that net in 19 EPS estimate, that would be positive, sure. But probably more significant would be any news suggesting an accelerated timeline towards FAA certification. That's the big one.
Faster progress on certification.
Exactly. Or maybe announcing new partnerships, significant orders. That would be a strong catalyst, too. And finally, maybe some updated guidance suggesting they're burning cash slower than expected, or see a clearer, faster path to actually generating revenue down the line, anything that reduces the perceived risk.
Okay, now, flip side, the bearish case. What could trigger a sharp sell-off, maybe hit that 10% downside or worse?
Well, missing earnings by a lot, so a bigger loss than expected, that wouldn't help, especially if it implies they're burning through cash faster.
Right, the cash burn concern.
Definitely. But even more impactful, I think, would be any signs of real cash constraints becoming an issue, or critically, news of developmental delays, or worse, regulatory delays. Any setbacks with the FAA.
That would be bad.
Very bad. Or even just language from management that sounds less confident, maybe hinting at a longer path to revenue than people thought. Any of those operational hurdles or signs the money's getting tight could really hit the stock hard.
So if you had to tell listeners, okay, ignore the noise, focus on one thing in this report and the call, what would that one thing be for Joby?
That's a tough one, but I think,
Yeah.
look, more than the headline revenue or the EPS number, the absolute key things are that certification progress, concrete updates there,
Yeah.
and the cash balance, the runway.
Verification and cash.
Yeah.
Get to that.
Given where they are, development stage, those two things just tell you so much more about the real health and prospects of the company than the standard financials right now. How much time do they have, and are they making real progress in that time?
Okay, putting it all together then. Heading into this report, what's your overall leaning? Are you feeling more bullish, bearish, or just neutral on Joby right now?
Overall, I'd say the leaning is neutral. The risk versus reward seems pretty balanced. Maybe slightly more risk to the downside just because of that macro environment we talked about, the sector headwinds.
A bit cautious.
A bit cautious, yeah. But that said, there's always that potential for a sharp move up if they deliver some really meaningful operational news. So it's not a clear conviction call either way right now. Balanced, but maybe leaning slightly cautious.
And just for fun, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in a large positive earnings surprise? Strictly talking financials here.
Oh, strictly financials. Pretty low. I'd give it maybe a 4 out of 10.
Before, okay.
Yeah, low confidence for a large positive surprise just on the EPS or revenue line. Again, because of their stage, no real revenue, expected losses, any significant upside surprise is much more likely to come from those operational updates hitting milestones, not from the P&L statement itself.
Right, the surprise would be operational, not financial. Makes
Yeah.
sense. So last question. For listeners who are thinking about trading around this event, maybe trying to play that implied 10% move, what strategies or considerations should they keep in mind?
Okay, yeah, for traders. Well, if you're risk averse, honestly, the safest play is probably just to sit it out. Avoid holding through the earnings release because of that binary risk, that potential gap up or down.
Stay on the sidelines.
Could be the prudent move. Now, if you are willing to take on risk, you could consider a defined risk options strategy. Something like a straddle or a strangle, designed to profit from a big move regardless of direction, playing that implied plus minus 10%.
Got it. Defined risk.
Key is define risk, and be ready to adjust quickly right after the news hits, based on how the market reacts initially. Short-term traders might also look at those support and resistance levels, $15 and $18, as potential targets or entry-exit points. But crucially, strict risk management is essential. No guessing games.
Absolutely. Okay, so wrapping it up. When Joby Aviation reports, the key takeaway seems to be, look beyond the standard profit and loss. Focus on the journey, right? The certification progress, the cash runway. There are steps towards actually getting these eVTOLs in the air commercially.
Indeed. The financials are just one piece, a snapshot. The real narrative for Joby, the story investors are betting on, it's in those operational milestones, the path to commercial flight, and whether they have the cash to get there. It really highlights how you need different tools, different perspectives to analyze different kinds of companies.
Definitely a different kind of company with a huge, bold vision. Well, thank you for walking us through all that. A really helpful exploration of what to watch with Joby Aviation.
My pleasure. Always interesting to talk about these future-focused companies.
We hope this gave all of you listening a clearer picture. Keep learning, keep exploring the markets, and we'll be back soon with more insights right here on Investing Talk Podcast.